Cool. So I did also another interview with Ives just very recently, and one of the things that it popped up in my mind with this music is that he's still a student, and he's going to a lot of student parties. And I was so jealous about that. And there's also a little story that we share. So I was on Twitter like a few months ago, and I saw this like nice animation which is from CodeSandbox. And I look at it, and I was looking at CSS variables at the time, and I thought, oh, this is perfect. I can do some refactors of the CSS. And then I sent it back on Twitter, and it was him. So, yeah, live. So, okay, so Ives is here to talk us the story about CodeSandbox and also how they integrated Vue. So that's a cool story to hear. Welcome, okay. Ives.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. I first like to say that it's really cool to be here, and there are so many people here, and I have such a strange voice over the speakers. But my name is Ives van Hoorne, and this is quite a hard name to pronounce. It's even hard to pronounce in the Netherlands. So you can also call me Ives, you can call me Ives, and for some reason my friends call me Flip. I'm a part-time software developer at an auction website called Katowiki, and I'm also still a computer science student at the University of Twente, which is in the Netherlands as well. You can find me on any social media under the name CompuIves. Okay, so I'm going to talk about an editor called CodeSandbox. And first I'd like to know who of you have heard of CodeSandbox before? Ha, that's cool. Okay, and who of you have used CodeSandbox? Oh, really? That's much more than I expected. Okay. Well, before I'm going to say what CodeSandbox is, I first want to tell you the story of CodeSandbox, because it's, I think that's the most important part of the whole story. So, about 1.5 years ago, I was on a vacation to St. Ives. And you can probably guess why we went there. It's a beautiful village in England. And at that time, I was still working for Katowiki, and we were converting our Ruby on Rails 2 pages to React. I've seen some shit. It's insane. So, but while I was in St. Ives, I got a lot of questions from my coworkers about React specifically, or about how to implement React with Ruby on Rails. And I didn't have my MacBook with me, so I didn't have any way to answer their questions. So what I had to do is I had to get their code from Slack and had to run it through my Ives interpreter in my head. And my Ives interpreter is not that great. So I sent them back that there was nothing wrong with the code, while the browser certainly thought it was wrong. So that's when I started thinking, what if I have my local development environment everywhere? And the follow-up question was, what if I put my local development environment on the web? So I got this idea, but like everyone, I just dismissed this idea, put it in my idea box where there are thousands of other ideas. And I started university. So I did a lot of student things. I started drinking beer. I went to lectures, like this, sort of. And, but at some point, I started feeling a bit unproductive. I didn't really build anything anymore, and I did at Katowiki. And this reached like a really low point when I also started getting Java lectures. When I started getting Java lectures, I was so done that I had to do something with my time. And during that Java lecture, I started a project called React Sandbox, and that sounds a bit strange, right? It isn't really React Sandbox now. Yeah, I'm glad that I changed the name. So it's quite simple. This was just the design. You have this editor on the left. You have all the components on the left. We didn't have any file system. And you have the preview on the right. And I was pretty happy with the design. So the next Java lecture, I started implementing it. And this is already a working version. If you started typing here, then you would see a live updating preview on the right. And I was so happy with this. It's quite simple. What we do is we get this code on the left, we transpile it, which is making the code readable by the browser, And then we evaluated using the evil function called eval. And everyone said to me, like the past few years, never use eval. And now I've deployed a production application with eval in it. It's like bound around eval. So you can probably guess what happened next. These Java lectures like never end. We have endless Java lectures. So I was able to build whole CodeSandbox during all these Java lectures. No, that's a joke. I started getting enthusiastic, and I started building more features for it. So here you can see that we started getting tab support. We started getting this cool browser navigation bar on the top, and you could even import from tabs. At some point, I got like really enthusiastic about CodeSandbox, and I started working on it on my free time. And I added feature and feature. I got like these happiness shots for building every feature. And I reached a certain point where I thought, okay, this could actually be useful for more people that are stuck on St. Ives without their MacBook. And I started thinking, okay, maybe we can actually release this. And that's when I got my friend Bas Buursma to join in, and he started doing the design of it. And in April, we released CodeSandbox. Okay, and this CodeSandbox is still like unknown, so I'm now just going to demo it, like show it. Is this big enough? For me it is, but okay. So this is CodeSandbox, and like you can expect, you have code editor on the left, you have a file system, you can import npm dependencies. It's just like your local editor. But the new thing is that you have a preview on the right. And since like last week, you can even resize this preview and do crazy stuff with it. And it works just like local. You can now, for example, change this. Well, like welcome to vuejs.amsterdam, like a classic example. And there you have it. You have welcome to vuejs.amsterdam. So this is what CodeSandbox is. And I want to talk about what CodeSandbox exactly is, what we do for Vue, and how we got Vue working. So when we released CodeSandbox in April, it became more and more popular. Apparently, there were many more people stuck on St. Ives without their MacBook. And as it grew in popularity, we also started getting more feature requests. And one of the biggest feature requests was Vue support. So I didn't really know Vue at the time. I hadn't used it. So I said to them, okay, it will probably be done next week. I can do this in the weekend, right? Those were my famous last words. Because if you have Vue support, you kind of imply that you also have Sass, LAS, Stylus, CSS modules, and TypeScript support, and we didn't have any of those. Our bundler was very primal. It was our primal bundler. We have this idea that we want any Vue CLI project to work in CodeSandbox, so it was necessary to have these transpilers in it. So the previous bundler was pretty simple. I had to rewrite the whole bundler for Vue support, by the way. It was crazy. It didn't take me a weekend, it took me like a month. So before it was pretty simple. We had JavaScript, just some text. We would transpile it first, and we'd get simpler text, I think. And then we would just call the eval again with the transpiled code. But we would add a function that's global, require function, and what it would do is it would just get the code of the path that's inserted and run this whole cycle again. Beautiful arrow. So it's actually very simple, and we've worked with this for 4 months. And it worked like a really long time. So if you ever have like a free day or a day off, I'd recommend to start building a bundler. And even better, build it in CodeSandbox. Even better, share it with me so we can go to the bundler party where every bundler creator goes. I still need to get invited. But there were some limitations with this old bundler. So everything needs to be synchronous. A require function is always synchronous. When you call it, you expect the module to be back immediately. But some transpilers are asynchronous. For example, Sass, LAS, Stylus, all those transpilers were asynchronous, so that didn't really work. Second problem is there is no parallelization. Funny word. But for example, if you have a JavaScript file and a SAS file, then it would be better if we would transpile them at the same time using web workers, but we transpiled everything one after the other. That was not very efficient. The next problem was that there was no support for emitting modules. And this sounds pretty vague, but I think you've all worked with this concept before, because a .vue file is actually a .css file, a .javascript file, and another .javascript file. The first one for the template, the second one for the scripts. And we didn't support that, and I think that's pretty vital for Vue support. And we didn't have chained loaders. So with chained loaders, I mean that if you have a SAS file, then you need to transpile it to CSS and then to CSS modules, but we didn't have this whole flow. Now we have a pretty advanced bundler. I'm pretty proud of it. Oh, by the way, I forgot to tell you, all bundling happens in the browser. So the only thing our server does is send the necessary file to the client. If I have time left at the end of the conference or at the end of this talk, I will show CodeSandbox like without internet connection, so I can prove my point. So how it now works is we have a more global view. We have all the files, and we then check which files are actually used by the application and transpile those with web workers. And after that, we do the eval again. I would never lose the eval. And we use this on the transpiled code. And it's actually much faster than I expected. So that's really cool. And so we got CodeSandbox. And we have a cool homepage since CodeSandbox 2.0. And I want to show that homepage on this big screen, just to say that this homepage has been on a big screen. OK, and now? It's all green-like. I've worked for a week on this animation. The next thing I want to talk about with CodeSandbox is the values that we have. When we released CodeSandbox, we set 3 values to follow with every feature we make. Those are lower the learning curve, encourage sharing and discovery, and give a local editor experience trademark. So I first want to talk about lowering the learning curve. Let's imagine you're this guy, and that guy has just built a single file application, which means it sounds very cool, but it's just an index.html with Vue. And this guy wants to move over to an application that's bundled and transpiled, and so he started doing research. He started looking into the terminal, into the code editor, into NPM, but he didn't really build anything in the meantime. So this could be quite discouraging. And maybe he found other questions like, what are build tools? Do I need transpilation? Do I need tests? And these tools are really nice, and Vue CLI has made it a lot easier. But for some cases, it's like you first need to learn all these concepts before you see the beautiful sun above the clouds again. And with CodeSandbox, we try to make this simpler. The idea is if you're a beginner, that you can just go to codesandbox.io/s/vue and start editing the text. And you immediately get this gratification of, oh, I've actually edited an application. I can call myself a web developer now. So that's one of the things that we try to do. With the quote, installing tooling should not stand in the way of getting started. And with CodeSandbox, we have much more. We can do much more, because we have control over all the files, we have control over the code editor, and we have control over the preview. So we have like full control over the whole environment, so we can make it easier for beginners. And I want to show a demo of that. So I've built this counter, and what I noticed is that I say interesting a lot during my conference talks. And also cool. I say cool a lot. So I want to count it. Now, this counter doesn't work yet. The first thing that is in this application is that there is these squiggly lines. And what we did is oh, it's not readable now. So What we did is we listened to all the warnings that Vue throws, and we show them in the file where the warnings are. And we also show this here. Per file, you can see which warnings are there from Vue, and this way it's maybe easier to notice them. And the warning is that I have a typo, so that's easy to fix. And I can also press save here, but I'm not sure if I have a Wi-Fi connection. Okay. Yeah, I don't have a Wi-Fi connection. That's a shame. So CodeSandbox does work offline, but we don't support saving offline. I can maybe connect to my, oh, maybe it works. Oh, I need to sign in again. 2 seconds. Maybe I can start giving a Java lecture now to make you all build code sandboxes. That's pretty strange. I think I'm going to use my network from my phone, if that works. Oh, okay, that's strange. Okay, so I can save now, I think, if I do this. Yeah, okay. So this doesn't work really yet. I need to implement the function. So I can do this.counter is this.counter plus 1. But I am a post-millennial, so I should probably use a library for this. Now, and this is a perfect example of reusing the full context. We detect that there's not a library here, and we detect that it's also not defined in the package.json. So we can show a suggested solution, add lodash as dependency. And when I click that, we add it as dependency, and it works. So now I can do this. Does it work? Yeah, it works. Oh, yo, I'm never going to save again. Another thing that we try to do is interfaceify everything. And yeah, this red line is because I invented this word. It still needs to go into the dictionary. What we mean with this is that we try to every configuration that we support, we try to create a UI for it. For example, the prettier RC, we create a UI to show that set the settings of this file, and it gets converted into code. That's another thing we do. We do support more config files, and you can use a UI instead. Another cool example is for dependencies. You can search for dependencies here. You can then select the version you want to install, and it will install it. Where is my slides? Oh, there it is. The second thing, how much time do I have left? I forgot to track my time again. Okay. Okay, so the next thing is we encourage sharing and discovery. And sharing is pretty obvious. You can just share the URL you have with someone else. They can start forking it and editing it and continue with the whole flow. But discovery is more interesting. Because if you look at CodeSandbox, we have 180,000 sandboxes on here. So this is like a goldmine of information. If you ever need help with a library, you can just filter on Vue. And then you can filter on, for example, oh, I want to know how Vuetify works in combination with Firebase. And then you get all examples from people that made a sandbox with Vuetify and Firebase. So you can look at that for examples. Another thing that we do is we try to make it very easy to embed your sandbox. So you can embed any sandbox that you've made in as an iframe or in a Medium article, and people can even edit the sandbox in the iframe. For example, I can change this, and it will update automatically. We also try to make it easy to import. So, for example, we have import from GitHub. If you go to this URL and then paste your GitHub URL after it, you will get a sandbox that stays synced with your GitHub repository. So if you make a commit, the sandbox will change automatically. And we even support committing from CodeSandbox, so you can also commit to GitHub from CodeSandbox. You never need to leave your browser again. You can also import with the CLI. If you install CodeSandbox and do codesandbox./ we will just deploy everything to CodeSandbox that's in that folder. And you can use our API. We have like an API, define API, and if you call it with files, we will create a sandbox with the, we will just create a sandbox. And this is especially useful for documentation. Maybe some of you have seen it, but we are also used on the Vue documentation to show single file components. The last thing that I want to talk about is local editor experience, and I can get very enthusiastic about local editor experience because we have worked on this for the past 2 months, adding features and features and features. And in the end, we want to make it possible to develop CodeSandbox in CodeSandbox. We want to go full meta. So I want to first tell you that we are using the Monaco editor in CodeSandbox, and that is an extracted version of the VS Code editor, but it works in the browser. And it's by the Microsoft team, and I'm like a huge fan of them because they made everything so much easier in my life. Another thing that we have is, I find this word hard to pronounce, feature, but we have it in Monaco as well. And it's built by Peng. He's on the VS Code team. It's really cool. Maybe I can give a small demo. For example, if you go here, then you can see that we have so many different. And we also have type information, view dot, and then you can see all the different types. And since recently, we got support we got CodeSandbox 2.5. And this update has many different features specifically for Vue. One of the biggest features that I like with this update is proper hot module reloading. We now support the Webpack API of hot module reloading, so if I would click increment a lot of times, then I would say, oh no, I have not, I need to do this times 10 because I don't want to click that much. Then you can see that the state doesn't reset when I update the component, and I can also change like this to bold, and then, woo. We also have prettier. When you click prettify, it will make my code is always prettified, sorry. And it will make it prettier. And we have ESLint support, but we don't have the ESLint plugin Vue yet. Like, if I do this, then you see there's a warning. What's the time? Okay. Now I want to give a quick demo. I promise it will be very quick, which is I'm going to do something pretty crazy. I'm going to export this sandbox to GitHub, then I'm going to make a commit, and then I'm going to deploy a production version of this sandbox with Vue CLI from CodeSandbox. So no terminal attached. Okay, let's first create the sandbox. And I hope this internet allows it, like Vue example Amsterdam, create repository. I've worked like a long time on this animation as well. But you see it for a long time, so it makes sense. Okay, now you get the sandbox that's synced with your GitHub repository. And if you open this, you can see that this is the sandbox, but with Vue CLI in GitHub. So it will work immediately as you clone it. And if you click download, you will also, by the way, get the sandbox with Vue CLI around it. Next order of business. I'm going to make a commit. So I'm going to make this like a red color. I'm going to save it. Please, connection. Yeah, it's saved. Okay, now it's red. I forked twice. Great job. It will now fetch the changes. It will check with the GitHub repository if there are any changes. It will see that this component has changed. I can do a commit message like change color. Beautiful animation again. Oh, it worked. Yeah, I'm really afraid that this internet connection is some. And you can see that we now have a commit with just this change on GitHub. Okay, the last thing, and then I'm done, is I'm going to deploy this sandbox to with Zeit now. I'm not sure if you've heard of Zeit, but the profile picture of Sebastian and me are both taken at Zeit Day. So if I click deploy now, I've seen this animation before. I like reusing stuff. So it's now deploying the sandbox. It's sending all files to now, and it will do this. This can take a short while. It can take 1 minute to install all Node modules, because it's installing Vue CLI. I can demo something else quickly. We also have Jest support. Like this is a Jest test, and you can see that it sees the tests. I can change this, and it will probably throw, that, and then it says like, oh, we've expected this value, this value. I just did a test before the talk, but I was too afraid to demo it. But it also works with Vue test utils. Okay, and now you have, this is the deployed version of the sandbox that I've just shown. So. Oh, we also show the error here, by the way. And you can also, if you just don't want to deploy, you can just take this URL and go to and open it externally, and it will show. Although the connection, okay, well, that's not a big problem. Okay, I think I don't have a lot of time yet left, so I'm just going to quickly continue. Demo, no. So CodeSandbox is completely open source, and we have 50 contributors now. And I want to thank the contributors, and I also want to encourage you to also contribute. So if you go to computevis/CodeSandbox client, you'll see our full repository. I also want to thank Bas Buursma. Yeah, you can come now. We've built this together. He does the design, and we both do the thinking, and I do the coding. And now I need to give you a hand. So Bas Buursma. And I want to thank you for listening to my talk and watching me talk. You can, if you have any questions, I'll just walk around here, and you can throw anything at me. And you can also, message me any questions to my Twitter account. Okay, thank you very much.